Shar, HaYichud of the Middle Rebbe, Chapter 1, Part 4. In the last tape, basically, we left off talking a bit about hisbonenus, that word that's translated either contemplation or else analysis. We said that those terms in our context were synonymous, and that's why the word hisbonenus rather was spelled with a double letter nun. Nun has the numeric value of 50 and represents the quote-unquote 50 gates of understanding, to be explained later in the book. So we're going to continue on here. V'nimtza, so we find that Bechinas ha'iyun hazeh, this aspect of analysis, which we've discussed quite a bit at this point, hu rak bechinas keli lebechinas hamaka debina atzma, is just a means for the delving of the understanding itself. In other words, analysis or study is the means, and the goal of that analysis is understanding. Ki l'cha'ora bechinas ha'iyun hazeh, for at a first glance, what we are referring to here by the term iyun, analysis, all right, we're basically asserting that studying a subject is the method by which to understand that subject. Nikra ha'amakas hadas balashon ha'olam, is what people generally refer to as concentration. In other words, the way that people oftentimes approach studying a subject is more concentrating on it, is more regurgitation of perhaps what they may have learned from their professor or read in a book, and they believe at that point they understand the subject. Or else you may have people out there, for example, who translate the term hisbonenus as quote-unquote meditation, and what they believe the definition of true meditation is concentration, whether that's concentrating on a mental image, like maybe they visualize something in their mind, or else maybe concentrating on their breath, or the rhythm of their heart, or a sound, or whatever. But the Middle Rebbe actually dispels the myth here that concentration alone can result in understanding some subject. Now, I know that's probably obvious to you, because you may think to yourself something like, okay, so if there was someone whose definition of medical school, so-called, was concentrating on a book of medicine, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to trust them on the operating table, right? Because we take it intuitively as obvious that a person cannot understand really any subject merely by concentrating on it, let alone have deep mystical insights into the truth of reality, which qualitatively speaking is much deeper than any secular subject, whether math, science, or whatever, logic. But, for some odd reason, sometimes we draw a false distinction between the acquirement and the understanding of secular, or physical versus metaphysical subjects, and, allow ourselves to give in to some of the brainwash and some of the hype out there about how to really, achieve deep insights, and begin to imagine that by concentrating on something alone, we'll mysteriously begin to understand it. I laugh because it sounds kind of ridiculous if you think it through, but whatever. Ve'eno kain, but this is not the case, as the Middle Rebbe assures us. The ha'amakas hadas, that the deepening of the concentration, by concentrating on something, hainu bechinas keli levad, that's just a means, lavo la'omak shel ha'inyan mamash, to come to the actual depth of the matter. It's not an end in its own right. And as we'll learn a little bit further in this chapter itself, the relationship between the faculties of understanding and the faculty of concentration are that, of course, there is a baseline degree of concentration required to hold the details of the subject we're studying in our mind, and that helps us to analyze those details better. And when I say analyze, what I'm really referring to, of course, is just compare and contrast, right? If, God forbid, a person had a difficulty performing that baseline level of concentration, that could prove difficult in their study unless they could offset that either, through different intellectual exercises or perhaps through the use of some medication that may be prescribed by, a doctor or both or whatever. But assuming a baseline ability to focus on details and to hold them in the mind and to think about them, and when I say think about them, I mean analyze them, compare and contrast, then a person's going through that process of studying to begin to understand the subject better, And as we'll learn in the chapter, there's a whole progression, then have insights into the subject. And we'll talk now about a deeper level of concentration than that baseline level of concentration, which is when a person's able to understand explanations and analogies.